I don't think it's linear. And I'm sure you know this better than me. I don't think it's a linear thing that, okay, now it's gone. It's like,
no,
there's months
you live
where
with
it's
it.
great. Yeah. And
You
there's
live with
months
it.
where it's sucky based on my sleep. That's one of the number one things for me, or my boundaries, or just other lifestyle things. It's so much deeper than just like, ooh, do I have it or do I not? It's a spectrum that I think is constantly evolving based on how you're managing stress, hormones, just so many things. And so I look at it very holistically versus like a definitive, here you are in the spectrum of ADHD. It's like, sometimes I'm like, I don't even feel like I have it. And then some months I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I left the stove on again, you know?
Welcome to Successful with ADHD. I'm Brooke Schnittman, and if you have ADHD and are feeling overwhelmed, chaotic, and negative self-beliefs, you're in the right place. The Successful with ADHD podcast shares my guests' journeys of overcoming challenges, offering their tips and strategies for success to empower you to take control of your life and thrive with ADHD. Let's get started. Hi, Angie.
Hello. Oh, I'm so excited. So excited to chat about my issues. I'm like, oh God, here we go. Talking about my darn problems, okay?
You do not have ADHD at all.
I mean, I like to I'm actually trying to, side note, after this podcast, of course, I'm trying to not talk about it as much because I've noticed it's like exacerbates it almost. It's like, it's a thing. Okay. We don't need to like make it this whole, it makes it worse then for me. Cause then it's like, I'm labeling myself and then I'm like, oh, I'm broken. And you're not, you know? So it's,
Absolutely.
I don't know.
It's just
difficult to almost talk about.
Yeah. Hey, I totally get it. I just got off a podcast with Dr. Mate and he was saying, listen, like just because you have ADHD doesn't mean that that is explaining anything. There's so many descriptions to it and there's so many symptoms. So, you know, we all look different. We all are different with it. So anyway, welcome. And it's so nice to finally have you. And for those of you who don't know Angie, she's an entrepreneur, founder, creator, comedian, very funny, podcaster, speaker, and the host of the Angie Lee Show. And if you haven't listened, it is explicit, but it's very funny. Very funny. So hide your kids, but
or if they're over like 8,
real talk.
If they're over 8, they already know. So just keep playing it in the car.
And the co-founder of Soul with her brother, Mike Lee.
Yeah.
Why don't you give us a real proper introduction? Anything I missed there?
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm a very multi-passionate person, obviously. I'm sure many of your guests are, so you're not surprised by that. The neurodiverse brain loves to do all the things all of the time, and we find these random obsessions that we want to go all in on. So yeah, my career started as a content creator, a blogger, did not want to finish college. No surprise. Felt like I was in jail, quote unquote. I would tell my parents since kindergarten, take me out of jail. So I always hated the traditional schooling system. I don't feel it's very conducive for the entrepreneur, highly creative, neurodiverse brain, unfortunately. And so I always struggled. And so I was, this is 2009 when I decided to quit. Well, 2010-ish when I decided to drop out of college and I started my online brand. And that turned into events, physical products, digital products, speaking, coaching, influencer, brand deals, podcasting.
It's kind of two things.
It's kind of evolved into everything and all these random things, and now stepping more into comedy. So it's just been such a wild ride for the last 13 years. And I started Soul, which is a wellness brand, a CBD line with my brother, which is really great. We started that 5 years ago. But my favorite thing to do in the world is to make people laugh and to entertain and to create really interesting, fun content. So that's where I'm at now at 33 with this crazy brain.
And you just got engaged, right?
Oh yeah, that too. And I have a cute dog named Pickles. He's sleeping right now, staring at me.
So you dropped out of college. You felt like you were in jail. And when were you diagnosed?
So again, I'm very curious your thoughts on this. This is like your niche. So I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm going to say something wrong.
There's say whatever you want.
There's no wrong way to say it, I guess. But my mom always had an idea that my brain was different. Mm-hmm. But she didn't say anything to me, which I think actually has some pros to it because she didn't want to label me. This is back in the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
The only solution to a hyperactive child, aka a kid who doesn't want to sit for 8 hours and learn about George Washington, like, I don't know, maybe because it's boring, right? And so
Right, like
I wanted to, run around and
not alive.
yeah, like, come on, the things they expect you to do at 10 years old. It's like, no, your kid's not broken. They're just bored and they want to go lick a tree and run down the street, which they should. They're children, you know? And so I think that there was this confusion of like, is there something wrong with her? Is there not? The teachers would tell my mom like, hey, Angie doesn't want to read the book. Only if she's interested in something does she want to do it. If not, she's out. Like she's just not doing her homework, or she's not, her comprehension is not high. Mm-hmm. She's very kind. She's very intelligent, but she's not paying attention to certain things. And so my mom didn't want to tell me because at the time, the only solution was Adderall and Ritalin. And my mom was like, absolutely not. I don't just want to put my daughter on this right away. And I like her energy. I like her creativity. My mom noticed the gifts of it, which was really such a blessing. And I did an episode actually on my show with my mom. So if anybody wants to hear the sweet perspective of a parent with a child who has this, and gosh, my future children, I'm sure will have it. So I'm like taking in lessons from her because I'm like, oh man, that must have not always been easy. Mm-hmm. So she didn't tell me. It wasn't until like 25 that I was like, Mom, something's going on. Like when I'm good at something, I'm really good at it. I have this thing called hyper focus, I feel like. But when I'm not, I just don't care. Is there something wrong with me?
When was this that you...
This was mentioned? About probably five-ish years ago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I was like, I always kind of just knew that I had extra energy and extra creativity. So it's like, I kind of knew, but I joked about it. I always made a joke like, oh, I have ADD. Oh, I'm hyper. And my brother, who's totally the opposite, would be like, yeah, dude, you just have like this thing called ADD. So it was always a joke. It was always kind of like my family told me I had it, but it was never a diagnosis because I had heard from so many people, like there's never... You could go in and just like space out in the meeting and the doctor's like, oh, you have ADD. Here's some Adderall. Like it's very easy for them to tell everybody they have ADD now. So I kind of was like, I don't want to go take a test. That's stupid. And so it wasn't until I went to
You're redefining the ways that people go about ADHD.
I was like, what am I going to do? Go to this meeting and tell this guy like, hey, are you ever not interested in things? Yeah, bro. Like, oh, here's some Adderall, So I remember once in college, I did try it once and I was like, oh, wow. I think I read a book for like 9 hours straight. It was pretty intense. But other than that, I was pretty committed to, and again, I'm not against anybody's decision in this. I know it's everybody's decision what works best, but I always wanted to try to figure it out naturally if I could. I did not want to be on an amphetamine. I'm already hyper enough. Okay. I was like, absolutely not. I don't want to do that. And so I think my journey 5 years ago was like, what's going on? Is there something different? So I started playing with certain things that we'll get into, like nootropics and certain things with my lifestyle. And I saw Dr. Amen's work. And Mike and I actually interviewed him. And Dr. Daniel Amen does a lot of work around the brain at his facility. And I did a brain scan there. And that was exactly 3 years ago. My brother wanted to go to see all the damage that's been done to his brain as a professional athlete being hit. And I was like, hey, let's see if something comes up.
Yeah.
And so when I did that scan, that was 2020. So yeah, about 3 years ago. And yeah, immediately the doctor, when I got my results, he basically said, you are extremely classic type 1. There's 7 different types, I guess. And he said, you're type 1 inattentive ADHD, which means your prefrontal cortex, if there's not dopamine surging, if you're not interested in something, you're out. Like you're just like, see you later. Your brain shuts down. He's like, but you're highly creative if you are interested in something. I'm like, cool. So I basically need dopamine to function in this world. He's like, yeah.
Which
I'm like,
all people
cool.
Do. But you lack it.
I know. So I was like, what? So that was it, and they give you some protocols. They have obviously the medication route and then the lifestyle route. And so that was really, I guess, when I knew, but I'll be honest with you, when I got the results, I just go, okay, makes sense. Like it wasn't like, oh my God, my life. It was like, I kind of had a feeling it was going to be more weird if you didn't say that. So I don't know. That's my journey with it.
Basically self-diagnosed 5 years ago. When you said to your mom, my brain is a little different. You knew it. And you said that like you were a coach at some point too. So you obviously know a lot about self-development, and I'm sure you understood ADHD better than some people who aren't in that field. And you probably had tricks and hacks to figure it out. So
yeah, I think it's a constant. I don't think it's linear. And I'm sure you know this better than me. I don't think it's a linear thing that, okay, now it's gone. It's like,
no,
there's months where it's great. Yeah. And there's months where it's sucky based on my sleep. That's one of the number one things for me, or my boundaries, or just other lifestyle things. It's so much deeper than just like, ooh, do I have it or do I not? It's a spectrum that I think is constantly evolving based on how you're managing stress, hormones, just so many things. And so I look at it very holistically versus like a definitive, here you are in the spectrum of ADHD. It's like, sometimes I'm like, I don't even feel like I have it. And then some months I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I left the stove on again. You know, it's hard when you live with another human because they're like, how did you not see that? I'm like, oh, because I was thinking of something else.
And then once I thought of that other thing, then I thought of another thing. And then my mind just went on a tangent. Yeah. Hey, I understand the whole feeling like you have it one day and not the other. When I gave birth and I was pregnant, my first trimester, I felt so focused. Yeah, I was sick, but because your hormones shift, whether when you're pregnant, when you go through menopause, when you're getting your period, your symptoms fluctuate, like you said, with sleeping as well. So, okay. So I like how you kind of are just being honest about what ADHD, even as a successful comedian and influencer and business owner, you're still shining a light on the, strengths and the weaknesses of people with ADHD. It's not a one size fits all answer, and you don't overcome ADHD. You just overcome some of the symptoms by some strategies. So talk to me about what works for you.
I'm sure my family would be laughing right now. They're like, yeah, Ange, tell us what works for you. My brother would say nothing. My mom would say, oh, a few things. Clay would say, I don't know about that. So I'll give you my response. There's so many different things I've done, but it is fascinating, the dopamine thing. So I've studied a lot about that. Like what is necessary in order for my brain, my prefrontal cortex to function, to feel this feeling of, and everybody knows that feeling of hyperfocus, where you're like, you're so obsessed with something, you're so interested in it. And so you go all in. So I've realized, more so than people who are neurotypical, the neurodivergent brain must do what they love. Not because it's like the cheesy quote, like, do what you love and it won't be work. I'm like, no, literally, you won't have a job if not. Because if you're not interested in it, you're not showing up. Like, you're just like, I'm out. This is silly. I don't want to do this. And so I'm constantly asking myself, what is the next exciting thing that keeps you up at night? Like, that you're so excited about, because then I can be really great at things. But I'll be honest, the things that don't excite me, I'm not great at them. And so that's been really frustrating, because I find that this selective attention is just so frustrating to function in this world. So that's when it gets frustrating. But I've played around with a few things. Number one is movement and exercise are a non-negotiable for me. If I can move my body, especially before I work or I have to focus on something, it changes the experience 150%. Movement is medicine. It is the number one thing. I think it's why I was an athlete. I think it's why a lot of ADHD people are athletes, is because you're moving that energy. You're actually moving that excess energy, and it's stimulating your brain, and it's releasing BDNF, which is brain-derived nootropic factor, which is essentially the little tingly feeling of like, ooh, this feels good. I can focus on this thing.
Yeah. and the serotonin, it's like a low dose SSRI.
It is. It really is. I know. And that's where I'm like, there's times where I'm sweating and I'm working out and I'm like, oh my God, this feeling, like if we could bottle it. Oh yeah, they have tried to bottle it into stuff, but it is just so, it's inexplicable. It's so good. And it helps me so much. So I try to make that non-negotiable every day. I'm also really big on my supplementation. So I do a lot of nootropics, which are essentially natural cognitive enhancers. So ginkgo, B6. I don't really play with caffeine, which I know I should, but I notice my body doesn't do well with caffeine, unfortunately, which I'm so bummed about, because I feel like it would be such an aid for me, but it just kind of makes me feel anxious, and then I can't sleep. So my favorite one is actually called Bacopa Manieri, and it's worked really well for my brain. So I do a shot of that every day. So I have a lot of my supplementation. I've cut out sugar, gluten. My diet is very pure. So I have a lot of protein, a lot of healthy fats, which are supportive to my brain. My sleep is like my biggest obsession ever. Like
I know you're talking about that today, 9 hours.
Oh my God, I can't not. And I think people think this is funny. I literally sleep 9 hours every night. And the biggest question I get is, how do you have so much energy? I'm like, well, I sleep a lot. So you're seeing me hyper because I'm
because I'm resting my brain and I'm at my greatest function. Yeah.
So I focus a lot on my sleep. If I don't sleep well, my ADHD the next day, is bad. And that's where I'm like already putting some pieces in play of what I will do with motherhood, whether that is obviously sleep nurse, sleep training. I'm going to do both of them because I will absolutely not deal with that. I have no shame in saying that.
Oh yeah. It's the
I don't know how
best.
people are doing it.
I work with someone who is full time essentially with her 14-month-old, and
Wow.
she never had a nurse, and she is a full time entrepreneur too. I
Yeah.
don't know how and her child wakes up every 2 hours. So yeah, talk about someone who has ADHD who puts a lot of pressure on themselves.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
gonna like get
Wow.
I'm gonna figure something out and not have shame about it
No.
because when I can sleep well, I'm a good person and I can function well and I can focus and I can be who I need to be in this world. But when I'm not, it's I don't like that version of myself. It's really bad. And so I think for me that's why I'm so protective of it. I wish I wasn't that way, but now I look back and think maybe I've always been that way since I was little because I almost knew that my brain needed it in order to repair. And so sleep,
Mm-hmm.
supplementation, movement, those are like the foundation that if I don't have those, I don't think it would matter if I was on medication, let's say. And like I said, I've only done Adderall maybe once. I've recently been looking into something called Strattera, which is, I guess, a amphetamine one, but I don't really want to mess
Non-stimulant.
with.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a non-stimulant, but again, I don't want to mess with anything pre and during and post pregnancy and stuff like that. So I don't know. It's very interesting. You're catching me at an interesting time with it, where I'm actually, I don't know. I've considered it like, okay, just take it once a month and like get a bunch of work done that day, but I'm still always pretty committed to like, okay, how can I just go back to the basics and be kind to myself when I have those
And
moments
fuel
where
your
like,
brain. Yeah.
yeah, and a lot of it's systems too. So Clay is exactly the opposite, of course. He's extremely organized, extremely calm, extremely has
For
everything in
those of
Excel
you
spreadsheet.
who don't know, Clay is her fiance.
Yeah. So I can't imagine when you told me your husband is ADHD, I'm like, what is your house like? Like, no, I can't. Oh my God. God bless your
Yep.
soul.
Yep. It's a lot of fun. So yeah, no, it is and it isn't, because he has created systems that work for him, and he's so disciplined because
Oh,
that's
okay.
what was instilled in him when he was younger. But also having me who knows ADHD, I give him a lot more grace in certain things, and
Mm,
we make ourselves communicate week after week just to
yeah.
schedule and all of those things to make it work.
Yeah. He doesn't have as much grace for it. So
It's
that's the
hard.
hard
It's
part
hard.
of it.
Yeah.
And I'm so intrigued by his brain because I'm just like, how did you do that? And I think he's intrigued and also very frustrated with my brain, to be honest. So it can really affect things. You know, I think on a serious note, obviously I make jokes of a lot of things, but it can really damage and hurt relationships. It's a pretty, if it gets
Oh
bad,
yeah.
because if someone doesn't understand what's going on, they truly think that you're just being careless and being stupid and being immature. And it's like, that's not my
No.
intention. My intention was truly to do this one thing, and the next thing you know, this happens. So what I've learned is I have a lot of sticky notes everywhere. Sticky notes are like my best friend. I write notes to myself all day long. I'm writing down every single little thing that I have to do. Everything is either in like a calendar, a booklet, an Excel doc. Our home, we're going to have like a whole home processing system through this app called Notion soon. So I'm trying to
Mm-hmm.
get more like that. And I'll be honest, it's not fun. I don't like it. Part of me is like, this is so stupid. But if I don't, Clay will leave me. So so I hope this is
We
hopeful for
don't
the
want that
listeners.
to happen. But don't you feel anxious when you don't do that? Like it's something that you don't want to do, but then when you do it, you're like, oh, I'm so glad I did. One of
Yeah, I do
those.
feel better when I accomplish things because I get a dopamine hit. So I've
Yeah.
noticed when I'm quote unquote lazy or I don't do the thing or follow through, I actually get really sad because I'm not getting that hit, whether that's healthy or not. I'm not getting the drug of like, oh, I did something, I got it done. Um, but I don't know, like I'm I'd be I don't know yet. I haven't hit that point yet where I'm like, oh, I love the systems in the house because then I can relax. No, I still think it's a headache to put these systems together.
Okay. Well, that's what I
So
love about
no,
you. You're
I
honest.
don't like it.
You don't like it. Okay. So you get the dopamine hit though from throwing out the post-it when you finish it. So those systems are working for your soon to be marriage. What else?
You know, something I'm working on still is I'm getting better at this. The few times I've done it, it does seem to work well, but I don't know why I still resist it. Is batch creating things or batching your life. So doing specific things on specific days and treating my work like a sprinter versus a marathon runner. And so I notice I still am very attracted to, or that's my natural inclination, is to do a little bit of everything every day versus giving specific tasks for specific days. So then I'm not task switching, because task switching is very exhausting for the brain. And so, for example, let's say Mondays and Tuesdays I would podcast, and then Wednesdays and Thursdays are meeting days. Instead of merging those and blending those, that's been a tip that somebody gave me who was in the ADHD space. And they said I should start doing that because I don't do that. And I was like, oh man, I wonder if that would be helpful to like do all my podcasts for the month on 2 days of the beginning of the month. And then I'm done for the month, versus like I sprinkle it, or I try to, and then it just doesn't. It's just, I think I'm making it harder on myself. So that's something that I do want to try to implement more as well.
Yeah, the task switching for the ADHD brain is so hard because attention shifting is part of our executive functions. And also, it can take up to 10 minutes once you switch for your brain to get into the next task. So you're actually wasting time every time we switch from task to task. So it's not being productive.
Dang.
And then it's draining on your dopamine as well. I love that.
That
And
darn dopamine.
that darn dopamine, those neurotransmitters. So you own Soul CBD, and it's with your brother. And Mike, is he neurotypical or does he have ADHD?
Oh, he is neurotypical. I
Okay.
am no one in my family. Well, my dad has it pretty bad for sure. My mom is neurotypical. My brother is neurotypical. Clay is neurotypical. So they all just love putting up with my brain.
So how did you both decide to get into business together?
Yeah, we me being the adventure seeker that I am, I was like, hey, we should start a business around this, because we both fell in love with CBD. I love it for anxiety. I find that one of the side effects, unfortunately, with ADHD for me is anxiety and overwhelm, because the to-do list doesn't get done.
Sure.
Everyone knows who's listening. You know what I'm talking about. Anxiety sucks. That's like a part of it that I hate about it. There's parts I love. There's superpowers, but that's a part I hate. And so I was using CBD for that back in 2014, 2015. I was doing the tinctures. And then Mike, as an athlete, was using it for pain management, inflammation, sleep, everything like that. And so then we came together and I said, hey, this is such an awesome time and a great opportunity for us. And I was building my audience. He had a little bit of an audience as well. And so we decided, let's make this a business and let's see if we can start a wellness brand around it. So it kind of started as not like a joke, but it was just really small. It was, my friend would come over and help us put together all the boxes, and we would label everything ourselves, and I would go to FedEx and drop everything off. And it was a very grassroots. We put our own money into it. We didn't take outside investors initially. It started very, very small, and just to see if we could make some extra money here and there kind of thing. We did not have an intention that 5 years later it'd become a massive brand and something that we're looking to sell soon. So it's just gone from starting in a living room as my warehouse to now we have a few warehouses, and it's really grown. So yeah. And Mike is the CEO. So people think I'm a CEO, and I am not a CEO. There's no part of me that has executive function in it. Yeah, no. So I do more of the creative aspect of it, a lot of the marketing, helping with influencer marketing. We were really smart with our branding, our influencer marketing. I had an audience to start. So that was the smartest thing I could do, is I did the hard work of building an intimate audience who trusts what I say and I'm really honest and vulnerable with. And so when I came out with the product, it wasn't too foreign for them to trust me to buy it. So that was what got us to our first million really, really fast. Is like, oh, I already had an audience. I already had these potential customers who trusted me, and they really appreciated Mike and I's story and our health journey. And so that was the initial
push.
Yeah, like the initial push of it. And then after that, then it started to become a little bit more difficult, and Mike had to hire people. He's the CEO. So we had to get really strategic with really good hires. And now we're at another level of like, okay, how do we take this to the next level before selling it? So it hasn't necessarily been this easy ride, but he has done a really good job hiring. We've done a really good job with the branding. I am obsessed with people and community. And so when you're obsessed with that, almost before the product, you let them tell you what they want. And that ultimately makes a brand that people are obsessed with, because you created it for them, not just because you wanted to make money. And
exactly.
So, yeah.
When you lead with the love for the passion, as you mentioned, it comes full circle. It shows in your product. And it's all people first, right? And I don't believe that if you just have a vision to make money in a service-based industry or a product that is people-oriented. I mean, everything is people-oriented, but I don't think if you're just going for the money that you're going to be successful long-term. but that's just me.
To him, that doesn't come as naturally. And so we complement each other well, which is
Sounds
good
like
because
it.
if we had the same brain, I think I would kill him. So
So once you sell, because you will, once you sell this, then what?
well, I don't know if you know that when people sell companies, they just kind of and they think
Go
that all
into
of a
another
sudden,
company. They become a consultant at their own company.
yeah, you have to still work for somebody for a while. So let me take the
Right.
let me take the unsexy or the sexiness out of this because everyone's like, are you just going to go live in Tahiti and sip margaritas? No, Cheryl, I'm going to still be working.
I love to
No,
know
I
Cheryl
mean-
is your go-to person.
I mean,
Wherever you are, Cheryl,
Cheryl,
Angie calls you out.
I just think it's never as sexy as people think. You know, you got taxes, you got shit. I mean, yes, obviously I'm in a great position, but it doesn't really change your life because you know what? You still got to do something you love. You can't just sit around all day. And
bonbons.
yeah, I think people think that, and then people go into depression after they sell things a lot. So Mike is already thinking of things he'll do next, and yeah, we'll see. I don't know. I mean, I still want to keep creating funny content. I would love to just go full blown comedian. So I think that's my passion, and to have the time freedom to just go do that and just keep creating really funny content is my vision. And then ideally, I would love to create funny family content, like mom content. That's kind of my vision, but we'll see what happens.
We'll see. And I love how open you are to it. You have the successful product, you have the successful business, and you're not scared to take that leap of faith again, sell it, and then figure out what's next.
That space is very volatile, so you could only stay in it so long. So I think we kind of always knew like, hey, the cannabis space is an interesting space that you need to kind of like know when it's time to get out. And so that was always kind of our plan. And then I don't know, maybe my next, I actually do think you'll like this because you have a baby right now. I actually think my next brand will be something in the mom baby space, like a product that is like non-toxic for babies, or like, I don't know. I love non-toxic stuff. I love healthy, organic, crunchy stuff. And then I think that the mom kid market is so smart and also is needing so much help with what people are giving kids and the products they're using and stuff. So I could see in 5 years that being like my thing is like I come up with something like that. I don't know. So we'll see if I don't know. And then Mike might be the CEO again. I don't know. I mean, I think it's a wild ride. So we'll see.
Yeah. And you're down for it. So
yeah.
I also like the fact that you don't just jump in to like the end goal right away. Like I feel like a lot of people with ADHD think they have to accomplish something, or even just neurotypicals in general. Like they see success on social media and they think that it's overnight. And you took a small step, you used your own money, Mike used his own money, and you started in a grassroots environment. So I think that's really cool that you were pretty logical about it and you grew it like with very small steps rather than just taking a bunch of investor money and saying, all right, we're doing this. And there's nothing wrong with that, but you were practical about it.
Yeah, I guess so. I'm really obsessed with enjoying the journey. So if you guys, anybody listening knows what the Enneagram is, I think some of those quizzes are kind of silly.
What are you, a 2, 7, 8?
Oh, I'm a 7. I am like the most 7 there is. I'm motivated by fun. If it's not fun, I'm not doing it. I'm not motivated by money, which is hilarious because it ends up happening when I don't try.
Yes,
but I am like, what would be so fun to create? Like, what would be so cool? And so my friends who are 3s, they're all like, what's the goal? What's the da-da-da? And I'm like, dude, just if you don't enjoy the process, you could die tomorrow. Like, why don't you just enjoy what you're actually doing? So
exactly, because
that's
we
where
might
I'm
not
at.
get to the goal. It's about the process. Absolutely.
Well, you got to love what you're actually doing because even when you get to the end, you realize that it's not what you thought it was anyway. So it's like you might as well enjoy it.
Yeah. Joe DeSena was saying today that build momentum. You don't know when this thing is going to happen, and build it, enjoy it, and it will come when it comes, and it might not come. And it, like you said, might be different than you expected. So yeah. So at 33, you have owned and almost sold a successful business. You have been in multiple different roles in leadership. You are a presence on social media. You're soon to be wife. What would you say your number one success tip is for anyone listening with ADHD?
Oh, wow. That's so difficult, I think, because it changes based on the seasons. But I think.
What season are you in today?
I think you really do need to. again, I'm trying to figure out how to say it in a way that it doesn't sound like it is the cheesy Pinterest quote, but you got to find, I don't want to say do what you love because that's so overdone. That's so oversaid. And I'm allergic to cheesy, cheeky things. But I think that there's like this level of, it is so important for the neurodivergent person to find their interests and find the things that they are naturally good at. Because the things that we are naturally good at and interested in compared to the everyday person, we're going to be exceptional at, but yet we may not be as good on the other things, on the every other, the everyday things or the other things that we're not obsessed with. So it's almost like it's your job to find your strengths and to find your obsessions. And I love the word obsessed. I think when you're obsessed with something, you can pour your heart into it. And so that's now where I'm at again of like, okay, who am I now in my 30s? What am I now interested in now that I'm willing to pour my creativity into versus even 5-6 years ago? And so I think that's really important to have this self-awareness around your strengths and your obsessions, because if you can do that, it makes work a lot easier. It allows you to actually finish things. It allows you to accomplish those goals versus you swimming upstream and you're wondering why you can't do things. And I think it's because we're comparing and then trying to do what other people are doing on the internet or what they're doing with their jobs or their families. And so I'm constantly trying to get really clear on what do I want right now? Like, what do I want in the next 5 years? What looks good for me, or what are my strengths versus other people? And I think that can be really hard because social media and, comparisonitis, but I think that's almost my job, because when I do that, everything else goes better in life. Everything else goes smooth. But when I'm not staying in my zone of genius, it's almost like then things get frantic and I'm like trying to do all these different things and I'm all over the place.
Sure.
So I hope that makes sense, but find your zone of genius, zone of excellence. It could take a long time, but be constantly obsessed with trying to find that and refine that, because when you do, it actually makes your life and your work easier.
Mm-hmm. That's perfect.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering when that clicked for you, because I was listening to your podcast and I know that you said initially you weren't as spicy on it. You weren't authentically you.
Yeah.
Now you're you. So you obviously have gained confidence over the years. What has attributed to that, do you think?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's maturity. I think it's your 30s. You kind of all of a sudden, like, I don't know. I think the woo-woo spiritual people will say it's like a Saturn return or something. I don't know. You just all of a sudden are like, oh my God, what do I actually want to do? Like, wow, this is crazy. And I think working so hard and working so much in my 20s and having these moments of success, I guess you could call them, in my 20s, I'm now like, oh, wow, what really matters? And what do I really want to do? And what am I motivated by now? So I think it actually just hits you after you've done a few things. And I also think just time and maturity, and also just dealing with like, I've been public with my life since I was 19 on the internet. I've heard it all. So I think you also are kind of like, oh, no matter what I do, I'm going to have love for it and hate. So it's like, I might as well just do what I like, because there's always going to be a troll who's like, I don't like this or da, da, da. So you just get to the point where it almost becomes immune. You're immune to it. And then I don't know. I just want to set myself free. I don't have time really to not be me. So
I just like that.
I'm just more like even more carefree than I used to be. I'm just like, I don't really care. I don't need to do this anymore. I want to do this. And so that's kind of what happened too, is I got to the point where I'm like, I could just technically stop all this tomorrow. So if I could do anything, what would I do? And that's kind of where I'm at right now, is like, what do I really want to create? What do I want to put out into the world? How do I want to help people? Because I think that, I don't know, your 30s are kind of about that. If you worked a lot in your 20s and you're now like refining it, a rediscovery. Yeah. I'm in a rediscovery phase, which is like, it's been very painful, but also like kind of, I guess, exciting. So
I love that. And people can rediscover themselves at any age. So if you're a 20-year-old listening, or you're a teenager listening and you haven't found your thing, it's okay. Like Angie and Brooke are here right now. I didn't find my thing until 5 years ago. It sounds like you didn't find your thing until 5 years ago, and you still might find a new thing. So just keep going and enjoy the process.
Yeah. And we don't have like one thing either, right? I think almost like taking the pressure off of that too. Like, okay, what is your thing? What is your purpose? This word is so heavy. It's like, what? Like, that's serious, So I'm like, okay, I want my purpose in life to be a mother. And then my highest excitement is what I create. That's how I want to do it. Cause like, to me, family comes first. So it's almost like this other stuff is just kind of like, yeah, it's fun. I help people. I make them laugh. But I think when you put so much pressure on your career to be the thing that makes you so happy, that's actually really dangerous too.
No.
I'm very open about that. I think like
you're codependent essentially on your career. And then if something happens, then your self-esteem crashes. So yeah. And
you're right. That's a good way to put it. It's like codependency on like money or followers or success of whatever it is you're building, the company, whatever. And it's like, I have to, at the end of the day, know, like if all of it crashed, it's like, oh, I still like myself. I still have family. I still have friends. I still have what matters in life. And I think that that's also really important. If you can keep your priorities in check, then you're golden. But if not, then it's like you get sucked into a machine, right?
Yes, 100%. And I think that people, especially with ADHD, define themselves by work very often.
Why? Why do you think that is?
I think it's because they can be really good at work. So they want to prove themselves to their bosses and to their coworkers. And it's that contingent self-esteem that's built on rewards that they're getting from feedback, from employees, from staff members, from bosses, from parents, wherever you work. So it's them, seeking that reward. So that's why they put themselves into like this workaholic mode. And then you finally get burned out. You might realize that it's not a passion of yours in 2 or 3 years. And then you move on. And then through life, which is what you were sharing, you start discovering who you are, what your strengths are, what your zone of genius is. And once you really embrace that, that's when you start building this confidence.
Wow. I didn't realize that. Wow. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
I was a workaholic. I defined myself by my role. I moved to Florida from New York, from the hustle culture. I was a special education teacher, administrator, came here not knowing what I was going to do, but I knew I wanted to start my own company. And then 5 years ago, started this company. And from there and receiving coaching, that's when I finally realized who I was. And then I attracted the right people, met my husband, became a stepmom overnight, became a mom to a 14-month-old. So all of that started, like the stars started aligning.
That's crazy. Yeah, you're right. I didn't think about that. They do. I mean, we do find it, and because it's like it's the reward cycle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Last thing, how do you think that Soul CBD helps? I know you had mentioned people with a lot of ADHDers have anxiety. So whether we have a coexisting anxiety disorder, I do, or your ADHD generates anxiety based on your executive function deficits. How do you think CBD is helpful for people with ADHD?
Also, that's really fascinating. I don't know if you have obviously content around this that I can go read after this, but I'm curious, how do you know which one? Because now you're making me think, I'm like, do I have anxiety that then that just exacerbates this attention, or is it I have ADHD, which then causes anxiety? I've always been curious about that.
Right. So what I've learned is that if you have anxiety based on things that are not ADHD related.
Yeah, I do.
Okay. Sometimes, so like, it's not like you have anxiety because you're stressed out that you might forget something, or something related to your working memory, or something about being organized. I have anxiety about like my dad dying and, things like that have nothing to do with ADHD.
Oh yeah. Like you're all of a sudden like, oh my God, what if the world just stopped right now?
What if I don't pick up that penny? Is something bad going to happen? Now, I don't know if that's
that's deep
or anxiety, but like the more anxiety I have, the worse.
Like, what if the sun just decides to stop being the sun,
Hey, you talk about aliens being out there. So
general
you never
anxiety
know.
disorder. It's great.
Yeah, exactly.
So I probably have a little bit of both, but here's where CBD comes in. So CBD is the non-hallucinogenic form of cannabis. So you will not get high. We have 0 THC in our products, which is really great for people who want to function at work or with their family and not be high during the day, but get all of the medicinal benefits of cannabis, which is really great for your central nervous system, inflammation, pain, anxiety, sleep. And so the way I see it is, if you have ADHD, you're probably struggling with sleep issues, potentially. That's like, if you can't sleep at night, your brain's not repairing. So then the next day you have issues focusing. So We have awesome sleep gummies, awesome sleep capsules. So those I will take a few times a week. I love those. So that indirectly but directly helps my focus. And then we have actual focus caps called Big Brain that have the cognitive enhancers that I mentioned earlier, the nootropics like ginkgo biloba, B6, bacopa monnieri, ginseng, tyrosine. Those are all in that as well. And then the third thing is just our general gummies. If you're just dealing with anxiety and you're just like, hey, my brain is racing with a lot of things, I'll just pop a gummy. I notice sometimes I have social anxiety. And so I'll pop a gummy before I go to like an event or I go meet some people. That helps out a lot. And it just makes me feel like I took the edge off in a way. I don't drink, but when I have a few times, it's kind of like the feeling of when you've had a glass or two of wine, where you're just like okay.
Yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, like everything's good, but like you're still extremely coherent. You're still there, unlike alcohol. And it's not toxic to you like alcohol is. And there's there's just zero toxicity level. You could technically eat our entire jar of gummies because they're so delicious and you wouldn't die. Right. And you cannot say that about a lot of pharmaceuticals down the street that I could go get at CVS. And so I love that it's all natural. It's all organic, no side effects, zero toxicity. And majority of people are using it for anxiety and sleep. To be honest, that's the two biggest reasons. And so for me, I'm like, I got to sleep well and I got to calm my tits. So,
well,
so
we'll
that's
link
why
in the show notes for how people can get it for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
And then I just real quick also want to know, you had mentioned the vitamins that you take for yourself. And I know your brand sells that as well, but how did you figure out that you needed those specific vitamins?
Yeah. I'm a little biohacker. Okay. I'm doing you name it, I've done it. Okay. I'm red lighting my butt. I'm doing enemas. I'm doing lymphatic drainage.
All right. So this is the real Angie coming out, everybody.
The amount of time and energy and money that I spend on biohacks, y'all, if I don't live to 100 and have like superhuman children, I will be pissed. Okay. So I do a lot of this weird shit. So basically I started my obsession with wellness, 5-10 years ago. And so I started researching which vitamins and minerals help the most with focus. And then I would ask my ADD friends, I'm like, hey, what are you taking? And I've tried pretty much almost every nootropic on the market now. And I've seen which ones my body responds well to. But that's how I kind of made the list of, okay, ginseng, L-theanine, tyrosine, bacopa monnieri. And then caffeine in itself is like the number one nootropic, obviously, but I've noticed I don't do well on that. So I think you have to start with the basics. You could literally Google top nootropics and it'll give you, there's tons of blog posts on this. I would try them in isolation and then see which ones you respond well to.
Elimination diet, but the opposite, like bringing it back in. Yeah.
Yeah. It's almost like seeing which ones your brain responds well to. I don't know. That's kind of where I'm at is I'm always trying new things because it's a lot. And then the one thing we did mention that is so important, we're talking about adding all these things on and doing all this stuff, but say no to pretty much everything except the things that are important to you. I have really strict boundaries. I like socially and relationship wise and work wise, I say no to pretty much everything. And I try to keep my plate so clean and my boundaries so tight and then say yes to the few things that I really want to do. And that in itself helped my ADHD probably 40% more, like just taking shit off my plate. Like our lives are so busy and notifications and all this, all notifications are off my phone. I only follow literally 3 or 4 people. Like I'm making my life so simple and so focused. So
I love the notification thing. Sorry, not to interrupt you, but
no, go ahead. Yeah, I turn it off.
So here we go.
I turn them off all the time.
I know Jim Quick follows you, and he is my favorite brain coach.
Oh, he's Clay's really good friend. That's so funny. Yeah.
Really? Yeah. I love him. I actually bought Limitless for my husband, even though we live in the same house. So we have 2 of Jim Quick's Limitless book. And that was the very first thing. Turn off all of your notifications. Oh, yeah. All the notifications, unsubscribe to everything on your phone because we get thousands of notifications a day.
Oh yeah. I turn it all off. I'm in the mode now where I'm like, I get on social, I'm going to create, I'm not going to consume, I'm not going to compare. A little bit I do, but then, get off like 5-10 minutes. I'm a human, of course.
Yeah, but you're able to regulate yourself and understand when you're starting to feel that feeling, whether it be like physical or you're starting to get anxiety. You're like, oh, this is not good for me. Right.
Oh yeah. I notice like the comparisonitis chimes in and then I'm just taking in so much information in 5 seconds. I can be like, oh, there's that girl's cool shoes. And then there's 5 tips to start my morning. And there's this lady who's, doing this. And you're like, oh my God, wait, so should I be in Paris and should I buy those shoes? And then should I buy this course? And then And then your brain's like, I was just on a walk outside. Like, it's so bad for us. I'm actually so scared of how bad it is for us.
It really is. It really is. I mean, the quick attention to things and then the distraction by the notification. And that kind of goes back to your point from the beginning where you're saying like, you don't want to multitask. You just batch, right? Because our brain can focus on one thing at a time and do it really well when we are just present on that one thing without distractions.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being on here today. And again, thank you. Like, we know that you say no to many different things, but you said yes to this podcast, and it's because you care about people and you want ADHDers to thrive and succeed. So I appreciate you spending one of your 24 hours on me. Well, actually 9 of your hours are sleeping. So one of your 15 hours on me. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much. This was so great.
Same here.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Successful with ADHD. I hope it helps you on your journey. And if you need any additional support for you or a loved one with ADHD, feel free to reach out to us at coachingwithbrooke.com and all social media platforms at Coaching with Brooke. And remember, it's Brooke with an E. Thanks again for listening. See you next time.